At the beginning of March, I went on an adventure. I journeyed atop the Highlands and travelled through the lochs of Scotland. Why? To watch anime, of course. Thanks to all the anime, and just Hero Academia's general popularity, I had the opportunity to watch Ride Your Wave, Boku no Hero Academia, Heroes Rising, Violet Evergarden, Eternity and the Auto Memories Doll, and Millennium Actress. Part of the reason I went on this undertaking was to give me content to start this YouTube channel, god damn it, and get a head start making reviews before these films were released on home video, which worked out well. On the bright side, I can freely talk about spoilers for Violet Evergarden, as now everyone has the ability to watch this movie, so I'm go do that. Yes, this is a spoiler warning for Violet Evergarden, Eternity and the Auto Memories Doll. Go watch it on Netflix if you haven't already. I want to start by talking about the fact that this technically isn't a movie. It's not considered an OVA apparently either. I believe we have fallen under the consensus that this anime is a side story, whatever the fuck that means considering Violet is very much at the centre. There is, however, a movie coming out, aptly titled Violet Evergarden the Movie. For the sake of clarification, I'm not going to call the thing on Netflix that I watched the movie. I'm going to call it the side story in all future instances to not get confused. The side story was released in Japan in September 2019 and in the West early 2020, first at the Glasgow Film Festival, which I was there for, and then a month later on Netflix. The format of the side story is essentially 2 episodes of Violet Evergarden. Each has a respective character which Violet follows around, like in the series where generally each episode will focus on a different client. These 2 characters are sisters, and there's a lot of links between the 2 halves, which is why they are together for this side story. Let's start with Amy, because that's what the side story did. Amy is most likely an illegitimate child of the local noble, who was disowned, presumably at birth, and lived in a slum-like village. She meets a little girl one day, who she calls Taylor, and decides that she is her little sister. We see this is done at what seems like a very adverse time. This flashback is set during the war we know Violet partook in, or just afterwards. And Amy has just lost her main safety net to get food from the only other person we see her interact with in the village. Maybe she took Taylor in because no one did with her when she was at that age, or at whichever age her mother presumably died, considering she's not present and not mentioned. Or possibly someone did care for her when she was young, and she wants to do the same. Either way, this speaks to Amy's character. She is incredibly generous. Now, you'd like to hope most people would look after a young child if they found them starving on the side of the street, and, not in a creepy way. Thanks, hentai. But no one else offers to take Taylor off of Amy's hands, even though she's a teenager, and while they're all in bad positions, none of them worse than Amy herself. Amy resolves that she has nothing, but wishes to give to Taylor nonetheless. And they manage to get by. But Amy is sick, and she can only handle getting them through day to day. Until her father arrives. He gives her the offer that Taylor will be looked after in a high-up orphanage if Amy becomes Isabella, presumably her birth name, goes to a boarding school, and marries a higher-up lord. The exact circumstances are unknown. Maybe her father had one of his legitimate daughters betrothed to this lord, but she died and decides to use one of his illegitimate daughters to take her place, which is why she had to change her name. Maybe the offer came up and it was too good for him to refuse, so he decided to legitimize one of his daughters to profit from the family ties this marriage would bring. Politics nobles being as confusing as they are. Either way, this scenario gives Amy a choice. Secure a better life for Taylor and become unable to see her again, and live a life devoid of freedom, as she would be constrained by high society. Before she began looking after Taylor, the answer would be an easy no. She does want her freedom, even if it comes at the expense of her health. However, she does have Taylor, and following her promise, she will use her nothing to give Taylor something. If Amy has nothing, she can give Taylor something by becoming Isabella. She can give her autonomy over her life by having her raised in a safe environment where she'll be educated and free to do what she wants with her life, freer than what Amy herself can ever be and what Amy can provide her. Well, practical for the situation, Amy will lose her small happiness with Taylor and be forced to live a high-class life, which she will hate. A life full of riches does not make a rich life. What makes this a tragedy, however, is that this was Amy's only option. She could have spent those happy days with Taylor, but eventually her illness would have overcome her living in the environment that they did, and Taylor would have most likely have died too. Amy's only option was to die. She just had her choice in how to do it. And she picked a way in which gives Taylor life. At the end of the first half, Amy's part of the story. We are shown a scene where Amy is approached by one of the other high-class ladies at the school who Amy had made a villain in her own head, but in actuality who just wanted to get to know her and become her friend. This doesn't offset the rest of the scenario. Amy is still never going to see Taylor again, and she's going to live a life she undeniably does not want to lead. But this bit of respite is to help bring catharsis to the audience. According to Aristotle, Greek tragedies had the aim of bringing catharsis to its spectators, to have them empathise with the struggles of a character, and so can dump their negative emotions on them when they leave the theatre. However, the other half of the film does not follow a tragic character, but the ending scene ensures the sense of tragedy does remain. This does not mean the ending has to be sad. On the surface, the end of the side story is definitely not that, filled with the promise and the hope the sisters will be reunited again. While it is not inherently an unhappy ending, Amy is still the most tragic character. She does not know Taylor is planning on meeting her, and that she is able to do so, and it was explicitly stated that she is not allowed to leave the house, emphasising that she is still trapped in her life as Isabella. Her little escapes out of the back entrance are repetition of a catharsis. She still has some escape, but it is brief and far between. She's wearing black in all the scenes during Taylor's part of the side story, as she is now Isabella and is in mourning for her past self. The catharsis in her then grows when she reads the letter from Taylor and realises she did manage to give something to Taylor as Amy, not as Isabella. Give her the family as her older sister. We see her start to bring being Amy back again into her life, resolving to write letters to Violet and Taylor, and in the final scene of the film, we see her unwrite, reborn as Amy once more. Amy's story is a tragedy, but ends on the promise of hope, no matter how far away that can be. Now let's talk about the funny shit. The comedy defined by Aristotle is the rise of fortune for a sympathetic central character. He also defined it as a celebration about the phallus, which this definitely isn't. Taylor is a child. She is a child. Although saying that, she does celebrate and practically worships Benedict, who acts like a dick. So maybe there is some truth to that. In all honesty, when I watched this for the first time, my brain was like, Amy part equals sad, Taylor part equals happy. And so I decided to do a bit of research of the history of tragedy and comedy and see if I could extrapolate the side story to fit those molds so I can give this video a cohesive sense of structure. I ain't saying this is a perfect example of Greek or Shakespearean comedy or tragedy, there are just some similarities. One of the hallmarks of a tragedy is the downfall of a good character is brought on by mistake or error. Think Romeo and Juliet, both dying because their plans did not reach each other. But Amy did not really have that in the story. Tragedy just befell her for no fault of her own. She had to go to the school, otherwise she would have died of her illness and Taylor would have followed due to having no other caretaker. Maybe there's an argument that she could have debated harder with her father to have Taylor with her and allow more freedom since it seemed like he needed her, but she merely went along with it. But that's a bit of a stretch. That being said, if Violet Evergarden, Eternity, and the Auto Memories doll is a deconstruction or a commentary or whatever on comedy and tragedy, then I totally came up with the idea first. Taylor's story starts when Benedict delivers Amy's letter to her, the letter which Violet convinced her to write. Yeah, remember Violet? The main character? I haven't mentioned her for like 10 minutes, but she contributed in Amy's half of the side story, causing an exciting incident for Taylor's half. She's actually vital to the plot. Isabella had given Taylor the opportunity to make choices, but this letter that is from Amy results in Taylor finding the choice she actually wants to make. At such a young age, Taylor is forgetting her surrogate older sister. Children are still forming a sense of identity, so Taylor doesn't lose herself, like Amy lost herself to Isabella, as Taylor hasn't fully formed her sense of self yet. As a child, these experiences can be less dramatic, as children have more resilience in the long run, as they have a shorter framework for their identity to be affected. But this letter helped reinforce those memories and remind Taylor of her family. This letter from Amy, this piece of paper, with words that Taylor couldn't even read on her own, implanted such strong an emotion in her that made her resolute in the choice she wants to make with her life. To become a postal delivery girl so she could deliver letters which gave her the happiness Amy's letter gave her. Isabella gave Taylor the opportunity to make choices. But Amy gave her the path Taylor wants to go down, the option she wants to choose. Without it, Taylor would probably not find a passion. I assume she would either grow up to become a nun, or a maid to one of the local lord's houses. She would live a safe life, but not one of passion and love of what she's doing. A life full of riches does not make a rich life. A few years pass before the story picks back up. Not literal years from the audience perspective, I mean like in the terms of the story's world. Where Taylor had run away to find the big brother who delivered the letter her sister wrote her. This has probably the best boots in history, and his heel game is on point. However, it's ridiculously impractical for delivering fucking letters all around the city every day. Benedict is in a slump at this point in his life. The city is moving on from the war and modernising with technology, but the mail service is still the same, still part of the era where war is fresh on the public's mind. The same postal service which he had watched an entire season on uses a medium to deal with people's immediate fallout and method of catharsis from the losses of the war people experience. We're used to seeing the postal service be used to help people move on from the war, especially with Violet, who used the postal service as a whole to move on from experience from a loss of Gilbert. But people have moved on from the war, and so Benedict feels stagnant, just going through the day-to-day motions, unfulfilled, like the majority of people with their full-time job. Me! Taylor, in childlike innocence and merriment, begins to spark the interest back in Benedict, by being fascinated of his knowledge of the geography of the city, something she can't comprehend doing without the aid of a map, or how quickly he can move throughout the city which he has to do to deliver all the letters. And honestly, I'd be astounded too if I had to saw someone in fucking heels run around sloped cobblestone delivering letters every day. She sees the extraordinary in what he sees as the mundane, which is how a child sees a lot of the adult world, and how an amateur interprets what a master of something can do. She shares with him her experience that he delivered happiness to her, and how that is her driving force. Once he begins to regain this perspective, he helps with finding where Isabella now lives, as a thank you, and recognizing that Taylor has her own happiness to deliver. However, as she's still a child who can't read or write, what the fuck were the nuns teaching her for multiple years? She needs Violet to help write the letter. See? She's still doing things in this story. She's still relevant. Also, Taylor is a big dumb idiot, and I love her. Violet fulfills her role as the auto-memory doll, who puts the words in people's hearts onto paper, and Benedict fulfills his role as the one to deliver happiness to the recipient, both by actually finding her in the first place and by being the one to deliver it to her. Taylor, as a trainee postal girl, gets to take part in this role and join Benedict, but as she is yet to fully become a delivery girl, cannot make the last step and personally give the letter to Isabella, but resolves that one day, once she is able to deliver happiness in the same way Benedict can, she will directly deliver her happiness to her sister. Amy was so certain she had nothing, but her resolve let her use that nothing to give Taylor something, and Taylor in turn uses this something to find her path in life, to deliver letters to give happiness to others, including her sister, Amy. Okay, now to talk about the stuff I'm not certain about, or have no idea what the meaning is about it. As you may tell, I've been focusing on narrative, meaning I'm not great at how direction and cinematography are used to enhance a story, or answer questions the narrative asks. A great example of the latter is Perfect Blue, on this video by Breadsword. He knows his nuggets. And while, like most people, I know a huge amount about meaning outside of narrative, I only recently heard about stuff like leitmotifs and colour theory, so that's how little I know. KyoAni are gods at doing this type of thing. Look at Hyoka and this incredibly detailed video analysis series on it by Replay Value. Why the hell am I shilling on other people who have got bigger audiences than me, got better videos than me? I don't think this is how you do things on this platform. So anyway, there's this scene with Amy and Violet in the ballerina room. There's probably an actual name for this room, a dance room, I don't know, ballerina room. And the shot is so striking, you know it has to mean something. All I have is that Amy is trying to pretend to be Isabella and bury down all her emotional feelings about her life as Amy Bartlett into her subconsciousness and Violet might be doing the same with her emotions for Gilbert, as this part isn't set long after the main series. There's also these two clips in Taylor's story. Benedict goes to the old lady's house for a delivery where she looks out the window for a tower being built, questioning when it will be completed. He tells her it's a new world, implying that she's part of the past, because she's old. And it fits with the fact that he finds his job obsolete at the time and being left behind by all the other new jobs and general post-war mindset. However, we come back to this old lady in the tower at the end of the side story, and she asks the same question, to which he replies, soon. This doesn't really fit in his arc, as it has nothing to do with how he's content with his job. What I think this now symbolises is the tower is Taylor and Amy's reunion. Taylor will decide that she's a good enough delivery girl at the time of the tower's completion and reunite with Amy, that it'll happen soon. The old lady, I think, is a surrogate for the audience. We watch on, hoping to see Amy and Taylor reunite, but almost likely never will, as the side story ends before the tower is constructed, as it's not for us to see. We are part of Violet Evergarden's journey, and this side story is set way after the events of the series. It's not a conclusion we are meant to see. Seeing this much of the story at all is a glimpse of the future we as the audience were lucky in the first place, like how the old lady is lucky to watch the tower begin construction, but is probably unlikely to see it end. Now, these aren't complaints about the movie, but the reason I went on this journey through Scotland in the first place is because they announced the Japanese seiyuu for Violet would be at the screening, and there was going to be a Q&A with her afterwards. I booked my holiday around that, but luckily as the months went by, I found more anime movies to watch in that time frame. Ride Your Wave, Boku no Hero Academia, Heroes Rising, Millennium Actress. But a couple of weeks before I went, it was announced that she wouldn't be coming because of, the thing you're not allowed to talk about on YouTube. I could probably talk about it, I don't freaking make money, but professionalism. So I was really grumpy about that. I was going to ask her how different voice acting was to acting, because I do a bit of acting on the side, not to say we work in the same industry or anything, of course, I'm making my way up in the world. Another thing I take issue with is at the screening they were giving away these posters and this special card thing. I got the poster, but they ran out of cards. I want a card. Don't even put up posters. I took a second one out of spite because I didn't get the fucking card. Screw it. If you made it this far in the video, good job. Congratulations. You deserve a poster. If you want the poster which is on screen, just say in the comments below and I'll figure out a way to contact you so you can bloody get one. I mean, unless shipping is ridiculously high to get the poster to where you are, I'm happy to do it. I don't mind. Thanks for getting this far in the video. But I want one of those fucking cards.